Welcome to the channel Is Islam True? Today we will talk about a recent incident that took place in a city in Pakistan of Khanewal, where a person was stoned to death by a mob uh, over allegedly committing blasphemy against Islam by burning the Holy Quran. Before we move on, let's watch this clip.
पाकिस्तान के शहर मियां चन्नू में एक और इंसानियत सोज वाकया सियालकोट में श्रीलंकन मैनेजर के कत्ल के बाद अब मियां चन्नू के इलाका तुलंबा में एक और वाकया पेश आया है। तफसील के मुताबिक तुलंबा में ये वाकया उस वक्त पेश आया जब एक शख्स पर कुरान मजीद के औराक जलाने का इल्जाम लगाया गया। फिर क्या हुआ? एक हजूम इकट्ठा हुआ, उस शख्स पर तशद्दुद किया गया और
As we can see in the video, that a person was accused of burning the Holy Quran, and then there was a mob that was there and they demanded the police that he should be handed over to them. And police, for their own safety, you can't really blame them because they were heavily outnumbered. So they handed over the person and the mob ended up killing them. This is a huge problem in Pakistan, where I would say the majority of the population is radicalized in the sense that, first of all, they believe that people who commit blasphemy, so-called blasphemy, should be put to death, which, in my opinion, is contrary to the teachings of Islam. And secondly, even if they're to believe that, yet they cannot take law into their own hands. So, for example, we have this report from from CBC. They have mentioned that man accused of blasphemy for allegedly burning Quran stoned to death in Pakistan. And it gives the rest of the details as well. And this, of course, is being covered by news throughout the world, and it results in defamation of not only Islam, but the country of Pakistan as well. And we have some more details now emerging on social media as well. For example, this Pakistani journalist, she says that person who was lynched in Mia Chunnu has been identified as Mushtaq Ahmed, who was mentally ill. So this person is now, according to her reports, he was mentally ill anyways. But the important point that we should remember is that, as I mentioned, that there are two wrongs being done here. The first thing is that the teachings of Islam, they do not mention, or they do not condone putting people to death for committing blasphemy. In fact, when we see the Holy Quran, we see the opposite picture. For example, in this verse, in chapter number 4, verse number 140, we see that God mentions that it has already come down to you in the book that when you hear the verses of Allah recited and they're denied and ridiculed. So the word is there, ridiculed. In Arabic, yustahza biha. It says, do not sit with them until they enter into another conversation. So Muslims have been commanded that when the verses of God are being ridiculed by people, your job is, at that time, what you should do is to show your unhappiness with that situation. You should leave that company, not that you should engage in violence against these people. And repeatedly in the Holy Quran, it is, this concept is mentioned. For example, here in this verse, chapter number 25, verse number 63, it says, وَعِبَادُ الرَّحْمَنِ الَّذِينَ يَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ هَوْنًا وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا. It mentions that, and the servants of the most merciful are those who walk upon the earth easily, and when the ignorant address them harshly, they say words of peace. Similarly, we see that, when we read the entire Holy Quran, nowhere do we see that it is mentioned that a person who mocks the teaching of Islam, he should be put to death. Nowhere. In fact, we see the opposite in the Holy Quran, which is that when the verses of the Holy Quran, when Islam and Prophet Muhammad, when they're being mocked, for example, as Muslims, we should, first of all, we should avoid such company, and we should ignore such people, or we should try to present the true teachings of Islam to them. Of course, now, for keeping the peace, different Islamic societies can have their laws, and there's a law in Pakistan as well, which mentions that anyone who commits blasphemy should be put to death. In my opinion, that law is against Islam. But regardless, even if people were to believe in that law, they still have to, if a person is accused of blasphemy, they have to let the courts decide, not that they take justice into their own hands and they start killing people on the streets openly, like we see in this instance, for example.